So for years I've been pretty interested in VR, but never quite enough to like dive all in on expensive like PC VR headset. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about the research I just did to arrive at which headset am I going to buy. And so again, you're getting my actual feedback here. You might have seen other videos where people compare different VR headsets. That's not quite what this is. What this is I decided I wanted a VR headset. And I delved in, did some research. I'm gonna let you know which one I actually purchased. Like, I just ordered it yesterday, and by the way, expect some future content if you're subscribed to the channel. I'll probably be doing an unboxing video when it arrives, maybe some first impressions, all that sort of stuff. So expect some related content when it gets here. Anyway, the point is, I'm actually willing to put my money where my mouth is here. So all the recommendations I'm giving you in this video are based on my actual thoughts on the one that I personally want to buy. That may or may not be the same one that you want to buy, but I will give some thoughts on alternatives that I considered before arriving on this one. Now let's do a little background on my history with VR. So one of my VR experiences, I would say my first VR experience, was when I bought the Galaxy S7 phone. It came with a promotional deal with the little Gear VR headset thing from Samsung, and you know, it's some excellent VR. You know, honestly, it was kind of cool for what it could do. Like, it doesn't track your head movements like this, but you know, if you're sitting in a chair spinning, there were some neat little experiences. You could watch at least, you know, the like VR video. It was decent media consumption, had some okay games and things. It was a fun toy, but it was not a serious VR experience. The next one that I stepped up to was on the PlayStation 4. I, at one point, bought a PlayStation VR, and I had some fun with that. It was cool. But I could definitely tell that, like, you know, the graphics and resolution weren't like crazy good. And at the time I had it right around the launch, there weren't a lot of games for it. So after playing for it for a few months, I eventually sold it, got most of my money back on it. And that's been pretty much my entire experience with VR. However, I've been interested in the technology ever since it came out, and I finally decided, after being a little burnt out on gaming for the last couple of months, and I did a video about that a couple of days ago. If you want to take a look at that, maybe I can link it here. Anyway, I've been a little bit burnt out on gaming, and I want to do something different, right? Part of my issue is a lot of games just all feeling the same. So, well, what would be more different than just going the VR direction for a little while? Now, the last time I had looked in the VR space, there were a lot fewer options than there are now. So at first I was a bit overwhelmed. So I'm going to link you guys in the description to some resources that I found super helpful for diving into all the different headsets. What are all their specs? What can they do? And another channel that I found really useful was Virtual Reality Oasis, and I thought he had some really good content on there that helped me make my decisions. So credit where credit's due. Anyway, so what did I end up deciding? Well, this really depends on a lot of different categories. So with the different VR headsets, you've got some different issues. One of them is field of view, which is basically like, am I looking through tiny little binoculars or am I looking through like big binoculars? So how much of that edge of my vision is there? And there's also the issue of the refresh rate of the screen. So like, how fast and smooth can things look? And that can be a bigger deal in VR than it even is in normal gaming. And then there's other issues as well, though. There's the resolution, right? So how crisp and clear is your image going to be? And that comes with pros and cons. Some of the headsets went up to like crazy high resolutions and price tags, but crazy high resolutions. But the problem is, you know, I have a decent gaming PC. It's an RTX 2070 graphics card I have here. But, you know, a decent gaming PC can't necessarily push like 8K, you know, VR. That's crazy. So, you do want to find a balance there, not buy something with some insane screen resolution that you can't actually drive. So that's a factor. And then, you know, there's the various controllers and how well do they track. But then there comes into some less technical things and some things that actually are what made me make my final decision. So some VR sets use room tracking devices. So you put little boxes around your room, and I think different technology requires different numbers of those. And then that watches your motions and tracks your movements. But other headsets do what's called inside-out tracking. Now, inside-out tracking means that and again, this is the old thing, this doesn't actually have it, but the way I understand inside-out tracking is there's cameras located on the headset itself, And then the controllers and everything that you have output signals that can sense, and then it can kind of locate itself around your space using these cameras. And the inside-out tracking is nice because you then don't need boxes and things set up around your room. Now, this was a big deal for me. I decided that given the fact that I have a wife and kids, one of the issues with keeping the PlayStation VR around was all the cords and things, and even that had less of the like behind-you sensors and things than a lot of these other VR headsets do. So I decided I wanted one with inside-out tracking as one of my big deals. Other issues are, well, I mean, the vast majority of them you need to plug into your computer with a cord, okay? And that isn't necessarily the end of the world, but I saw that some, like the Oculus Quest 2, for example, have wireless streaming from your PC. And so that ended up playing a big factor in my decision making. So having inside-out tracking was a big deal. Having a headset that is capable of operating wirelessly was a big deal. And then the other issue is price tag. These things vary in price all over the place. We've got them down from a used piece of junk from ages ago that you might find used for $100 or $200. And then, or I mean, even less, you can get like literally this kind of thing that you stick your smartphone in for like a few bucks used or whatever. Or make some out of cardboard, you know. You go all the way from there, all the way up into the thousands of dollars of range for these kinds of things. So my budget was, I wanted to stay at or under $1,000. And my reason for that, if you really want it, is I wanted to use my YouTube budget for that. And this YouTube channel has generated about that much money in the, I started this in like October. So I'm not rolling in the cash here for this channel. But I did want to purchase something that was within the budget of the money I've made here, so it's not impacting my, normal household budget. So price was definitely a concern. So $1,000 was my absolute maximum, and less than that was better. So after researching all of these various things, my top two choices came down to getting the Valve Index, right? So the ones made by Valve, the people who do the Steam, platform, where if you're a PC gamer, you probably use Steam. So Valve made their own called the Index, and that was one of my top choices. And the other top choice was the Oculus Quest 2. And these are extremely different devices. They have extremely different price points. They use different technologies. They have different pros and cons. Now, let's get into the price tag. So the Index is a lot more money because you're purchasing controllers, you're purchasing little boxes, the head, the head-mounted display, and all of that. And I think you're in the around $1,000 range on that thing, depending on the kind of deal you might get or whatever. Whereas the Oculus Quest 2 goes down as low as $299 or $399 if you want the version with a larger, internal memory. So the $299 model has 64 gigabytes of internal memory. The $399 one has 256 gigabytes of internal memory. Now, the Index would have 0 internal memory. And that gets us to the main some people would consider the main difference between the two, which is that the Oculus Quest 2 in some ways is more like the kind of idea of having a smartphone strapped to your face, in the sense that it actually has some of the internal guts of a smartphone type processor built into it. And one thing that allows it to do is it can actually run VR on its own by itself with nothing else. It does not need a computer to plug into. It's not like the PlayStation VR where you need to plug into a gaming console. And it's not like the Valve Index where you need to plug into a gaming PC. So it can actually run completely self-contained VR experiences. Now again, because it's running on technology equivalent to a smartphone, it's not going to be running those games at the same kind of graphic settings that a gaming PC could do it at. But they are pretty good experiences from what I've heard in the reviews that I've seen. Again, I haven't actually experienced it myself. So take that from me researching it, not from my personal experience. Okay, now the Valve Index, on the other hand, can't run anything on its own. You have to be tied to your PC. You plug into the PC through a cable. The Oculus Quest 2 is able to plug into a PC via a USB-C cable. They call it like the Oculus Link or something like that. But as of a couple weeks ago, they even officially released a technology called AirLink, which, as long as you have a good Wi-Fi router connecting your PC and your Oculus Quest 2. And again, this is not the same thing as your internet speed connection, but the actual router itself, if you have a good 5 gigahertz connection with a strong signal and not a lot of packet loss between these devices, then you can actually stream wirelessly. Now, there's been something called Virtual Desktop, which is an app you could install on the Oculus Quest 2, as well as some other displays, that allowed you to do this prior to Oculus officially releasing this, their AirLink. But now they are having their own official support for this, this type of wireless connection to your PC. Again, the Oculus Quest 2 does the inside-out tracking. The Valve Index does the outside-in tracking, or whatever it's called, where you actually have the little boxes around your room and things like that. And so that's what ended up swaying me. The thing was that some of the main features I was looking for, the inside-out tracking and the wireless ability to connect to the PC without having to buy other weird dongles to attach and whatnot, were available on the Oculus Quest 2, and they were not available on the Valve Index. And another thing, now this was less of a big deal, is the Oculus Quest 2 has a higher resolution screen than the Index does. Now, so there's a lot of things going for the Oculus Quest 2. Now, there's a huge downside that a lot of people are going to point out, and for some people, this will be a complete deal breaker. The Oculus Quest 2, you know, Facebook bought Oculus a while back, and despite, to my understanding, I think them promising they wouldn't do this type of a thing, they did eventually require a Facebook logon to use your Oculus Quest 2. So, to use the Oculus Quest 2, you have to sign in with a Facebook account. And for some people, that's going to be a complete deal breaker, and I hate that they made this decision. I think they should have kept Oculus as, sure, it can be owned by Facebook under that parent company, but they should not have got their social media crap involved in their VR experience. I think that's a horrible decision, and is by far the biggest drawback to the platform. However, that being said, you can get into the Oculus Quest 2 for as low as $299 versus the $1,000-ish range we're talking for the Index. Now, there were some other distinctions between the two. Like I said, the Oculus Quest 2 main advantages were it has a higher screen resolution, it has inside-out tracking, and it can operate completely wirelessly to your PC. There are some drawbacks here, though. The Oculus Quest 2, when you connect it to your PC, it will have compression on the video stream. It does not plug in directly with like a DisplayPort type of connection. It plugs in via an actual data cable that's compressing the video off of your PC. So you're not going to get as perfect clear of a signal. And to my knowledge, this will also introduce a little bit of latency to the experience. And this is also the case if you're streaming it wirelessly via their AirLink or using the Virtual Desktop app. You are going to get some video compression on it, and that's just going to be one of the trade-offs for this technology. Now, for me personally, I looked up a lot of reviews and comparisons that were doing their best to capture comparisons between it being completely uncompressed versus running on the link cable and on the AirLink and the Virtual Desktop experience. And to be honest, well, yeah, there was a little compression, a little bit of latency. It seemed like in most experiences, to me, and to many of the people reviewing it, they felt like the ability to do VR with no wires was a preferred experience in many VR games over a uncompressed image where you're tied in with a cable. So that did factor into my decision making, and so that is something to keep in mind. I hate that it's compressed. I wish that this could happen completely uncompressed, and I'm hopeful that in the future that kind of technology will be available and functioning great at a reasonable price point. So the Index you're going to be uncompressed, but you're going to be plugged directly into your screen. Now, one thing is when the Oculus Quest 2 first came out, so let's break down some of our other features here. So when the Oculus Quest 2 first came out, I believe it launched with a 72 hertz refresh rate on the screen, which was later updated to 90 hertz and recently has just unlocked a 120 hertz mode on the screen. So one of the drawbacks to the Quest 2 when it initially launched was the 72 hertz refresh rate, which was lower than many competing headsets. But now it has been unlocked up to 120 hertz, and that's a big deal. Even the 90 was a big bump up, and I think I would have been fine there, but now we got 120 hertz available. Now that doesn't mean that every game, especially when you're running on its own little like smartphone processor versus plugging into a PC, that doesn't mean that every game is actually going to be able to run at 120 hertz. But the screen itself can handle that now, which I think is fantastic and removed one of my main reasons I didn't buy one like back at launch. I was interested in it. So basically, you've got a decent refresh rate now on the Quest 2. I believe the index still can go higher. I think it does 120 hertz out of the box, and I think it can go up to 144 hertz. You might want to double check me on that with some kind of experimental mode, but the point is, when you're getting to that territory, it's great. I believe the index has a little bit of better of a field of view to my understanding, although I don't think it's a huge difference. But again, the index has a lower resolution screen. Now let me hop into that a little bit. The higher the resolution is, the harder it's going to be for you to drive that on your graphics card. So one thing you might want to consider is whether or not you'd actually prefer to have a bit of a lower resolution screen to be able to drive higher graphical settings. But for me, I did think like the higher resolution screen on the Oculus Quest 2 was something I wanted. Now, also in the controllers themselves, you have some differences. The index has more of an ability to sense your finger movements, whereas the Oculus controllers have a much more limited ability to sense your finger movements, although I think there is some ability to just, if you're not using the controllers at all, to try to have the cameras built into the headset sense your finger movements if you're not using controllers at all. But when you're using the controllers, I think it has some limited ability to sense like your thumb and index finger, but your other fingers are going to be tied in to the controller itself. But here's the thing. As I said, there's some pros and cons to both of these experiences. But when one of them can be had for $299 and the other one's pushing $1,000, here's what made my final decision. I can buy an Oculus Quest 2 now, see if I'm really into VR, and then I can buy another display when a new generation comes out in the future, and probably still be spending the same amount of money as if I bought an Index right now. So if the Index is going to cost me $1,000 to set up right now, I could buy a $400, which ended up being what I did. I bought a $400, the $399 Oculus Quest 2. The reasons, again, were price, because now I could still have saved $600 to invest in a new headset in a year or two when newer technology comes out, and maybe I could get out of the Facebook thing. But for now, that was the big thing. For the price, it also gave me the wireless out-of-the-box experience that I'm looking for that can still connect to my PC with the minor trade-offs of some video compression and a little bit of latency, but the experience I've seen from reviews online is that for the most part, if you have a good wireless router, it's a great experience and does an awesome job. All right, guys, what are you guys' thoughts in the comments? I know in this video I focused on just the Index and the Oculus Quest 2 because those are two that I quickly narrowed in my search on and spent the most time comparing. However, there are a lot of other options out there in the VR landscape. What are your guys' thoughts? Do you own a VR headset? What's your thought? Do you hate me now that I bought into the Facebook log? Again, what do you guys think about all this? Look for future content related to this on my channel as I get it. Maybe we'll do some unboxings and first impressions and reviews and all sorts of things related to the Oculus Quest 2. And if you made it this far and you haven't subscribed to the channel, you can think about that, liking the video. I also started another channel recently where I post some math-related content. I am a math teacher by day. We'll see how much I do on that channel, but if you want to follow it, I can probably put a link to something related to that up here. And I hope you guys have an excellent day.